Senator Chris Murphy didn't walk into this hearing to play nice. He came in with facts, fire, and a mission to call out what he saw as one of the most dangerous deceptions in American foreign policy. Across from him sat Marco Rubio, defending a narrative that only 12% of U.S. foreign aid ever reaches the people who need it most. But Murphy wasn't buying it. To him, this wasn't just a math problem. It was a test of truth, accountability, and the soul of American leadership. What unfolded wasn't a polite policy discussion. It was a clash over whether foreign aid is a lifeline for desperate families or just another pawn in backroom politics.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Secretary, for being here. Before I ask my questions, I just ask that after this hearing, you go back and reconsider a claim that you made in your opening statement. It would certainly shock Americans to hear that only 12% of our foreign aid reaches recipients, needy recipients on the ground, the people who need the help. That is not actually an accurate number. That is the amount of our aid that goes directly to local groups on the ground. But as you know, most of our aid runs through bigger international organizations like Save the Children. Those entities are getting somewhere around 85% of the aid we give them directly to recipients on the ground. And so I think what you've done to shutter USAID is illegal, but I also think it's bad policy, and I do think it's important for us to all be operating with the same set of facts. And the fact is not that only 12% of taxpayer dollars are ending up in the hands of the people who really need it on the ground. Mr. Secretary, I wanted to talk to you about the President's personal business interests. During his first term, he made the decision to not enter into any new business deals during his presidency, that Trump-affiliated businesses would not enter into any foreign business arrangements. And that made sense because obviously it can be confusing for foreign governments to know how to try to win favor with the U.S. government if they have one route, making concessions that are good for U.S. national security, and they also have another route, which is perhaps helping the president's business interests. The president obviously changed that policy, and in this administration, his business interests are announcing new agreements and new investments into those business interests by foreign governments. And I think it stands to reason that creates a real problem for foreign policy, and it creates a problem for foreign governments in which they don't exactly know what the best way is to try to get on good terms with the U.S. government and with the White House. Is it to do what's right for American national security, or might it also be to do a business deal with the President of the United States or the entities that he controls? Just to clarify, when the President's businesses are engaged in negotiations, for instance, with the UAE, on their stablecoin business. There was this big investment announced recently. You are not part of those negotiations. Those are being done by the president's family or those representing the president's business.
Yeah, I'm not aware the president's involved in managing any business. He's, other than the presidency of the United States, his family is allowed to make business deals. They continue to operate the enterprises that his family ran. I also don't accept the notion that these deals, that, for example, in Saudi Arabia or the UAE or Qatar, had anything to do with the president. For example, the Qatar bought $200 billion worth of airplanes from Boeing. The president's not as far as I know, not a shareholder, certainly doesn't own Boeing. So the overwhelming, if you look at the deals that were structured, they were involved in investments in the United States. That's the deals he signed, and or investments in, for example, the UAE or Saudi Arabia involving artificial intelligence.
Well, UAE did announce a massive investment in World Liberty Financial, and World Liberty Financial is controlled by the president. And the president does actively engage in these businesses. He uses his social media to market the businesses that are being run by his family. I mean, just go on to his social media feed and you will see him marketing his meme coins. So that is the president of the United States. That is not his son's doing.
But that, just to be clear, that was not part of this. That was not an announcement as part of this trade visit that was conducted into the Middle East.
Well, whether or not it was made during the time the president was there are obviously business deals being done between Trump entities and these and these countries. Let me ask you about the one that is probably most confusing to this committee, which is the planned gift of a plane to either the United States government or the president. Is it your understanding that this luxury plane that Qatar has offered the president, and the president has announced he is willing to accept, is a gift to the United States government, or is it a gift ultimately to the president himself that he can use in his library?
Well, you'd have to talk to the Department of Defense, because this is a replacement or at least a temporary bridge plane for Air Force One, the new Air Force One, which is way off its delivery schedule. And so that would have to be with the Air Force. They operate Air Force One. My understanding of it basically has been from the very beginning that this is a plane that was identified after talking to Boeing about what other planes around the world would fit the bill that are out there that could be used now. They identified the ones the Qataris had as an opportunity for one, and as a result, or the UAE had that as opportunity for one, and that's how that deal was.
And it's not your understanding that the plane ultimately will belong to the president or to the president's library after.
Well, I'm not involved at that level of it. I've never heard that before. What I've heard is that plane will replace Air Force One, which is an Air Force plane.
Let me ask you about the dinner that's happening this Thursday night. The president has offered access to him to the 200 top purchasers of his meme coin. Reports are that maybe about half or more of those individuals who will be meeting with him, many in a VIP reception, are foreigners. Do you have a list of those foreign individuals who will be meeting with the president?
I don't. I don't know anything about. I didn't even know there was a dinner on Thursday night, so I'm not sure what you're referring to.
So you don't know whether any of the foreign individuals who are going to be meeting with the president this Thursday night, for instance, are on our list of sanctioned individuals, or whether any of those individuals have connections to, let's say, terrorist organizations abroad?
Well, I think if they had terrorist links, the Department of Homeland Security probably would not have allowed them into the country. But again, I don't even know there is a dinner on Thursday. You're asking me about something I don't know about.
Well, but listen, this is a dinner that the president is having. It is likely going to involve some very significant foreign interests. You have to be pretty wealthy in order to be able to get inside this dinner. Isn't that a relevant question for the Secretary of State?
Yeah, I'm not the social
Which foreign
secretary,
interests are going to be speaking to the president? I mean, it's kind of naive to believe that they aren't going to be in that room talking about national security matters.
Well, I don't think that that's the case at all, because I would be aware if it was the case. The truth of the matter is I interact with government officials and others in governments of other countries. That's what I don't say. You're asking me about a dinner I don't know anything about. I can't answer you because I don't know anything about this dinner. It's the first I heard of it. Like I said, I don't keep the president's social schedule. It's not on my phone. It's not in my pocket. I don't even know. I can't comment on a dinner I know nothing about.
Yeah, I think that represents a real problem for this committee, because there is clearly a way around the State Department for foreign individuals of significant influence and wealth to be able to directly lobby the president of the United States.
But I don't think
your
that's
answer
fair.
is that you don't know this is happening.
Well, I don't know that there's
that
a dinner.
in and of itself is a
I don't know
problem.
that there's a dinner, and I don't know what the guest list is, but I can tell you I've run into the president of FIFA from the World Cup. He's here all the time. I see him. He's a private individual. It's not a government entity, and he's met with the president and is friendly with the president. He doesn't have to go through me to meet with the president. The president has relationships and friends and people he's known for a long time. Some of them are foreigners. That's not unusual.
Yeah,
but you're asking me about a
known for
specific
long
dinner
time.
and
These are
implying
individuals
nefarious
who just
impact.
bought their
I
way
can't
into
comment on a
meeting
on
with
a
the
dinner.
president. I think you should probably endeavor to get your hands on the list to make sure that there aren't individuals there who are perhaps contravening national security interests that the
Well, I don't
Department
think
of
that's, I don't
State
have any
is
concern about that.
prioritizing.
Ultimately, I don't have any concern that the president having dinner with someone is going to contravene the national security of the United States.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Murphy's voice cut sharp, exposing how shutting down aid programs destabilizes fragile regions, fuels chaos, and leaves America weaker. Rubio pushed back, but Murphy framed the debate as bigger than two senators. This was about whether U.S. foreign policy belongs to the American people or to presidents and politicians tangled up in shady business deals and cozy dinners with foreign investors. And what happened next would shake the room. When Senator Chris Murphy took aim at Marco Rubio's claim that only 12% of foreign aid reaches those in need, the room went silent. It sounded like a devastating number, the kind of statistic that makes Americans question why their tax dollars even leave the country. But Murphy wasn't about to let it slide. He quickly set the record straight. That 12% figure didn't mean aid was failing. It meant 12% went directly through small local groups on the ground. The reality, Murphy argued, is far different. Most foreign aid flows through major internationally recognized organizations, groups like Save the Children and the Red Cross, that get 80 to 85% of their funding straight into the hands of desperate families. This wasn't about cash disappearing into thin air or lining the pockets of corrupt middlemen. It was about structure. It takes planes, trucks, and complex networks to deliver food into war zones, medicine into disaster areas, and shelter into refugee camps. Murphy's point was clear: foreign aid isn't sloppy charity, it's carefully managed logistics designed to keep entire regions from collapse. But then he hit harder. If the facts about aid were being twisted, what else was being hidden? And that question opened the door to an even darker revelation. Chris Murphy didn't stop at correcting the math. He turned directly to the larger crisis: the shuttering of USAID. For decades, this agency has been the backbone of America's humanitarian outreach, the lifeline that gets food, medicine, and disaster relief into places teetering on the edge of chaos. Shutting it down, Murphy warned, wasn't just a policy disagreement, it was skirting the edge of illegality. Congress appropriates those funds, not the executive branch. By cutting off USAID, leaders weren't just undermining a program, they were undermining the law. The consequences, Murphy argued, were catastrophic. Pull aid out of fragile regions, and the results are immediate: warlords filling power vacuums, children starving as supply lines dry up, extremist groups capitalizing on desperation. Aid isn't just generosity, it's national security. It keeps instability from spilling across borders and turning into global crises. But here's the part that should make Americans furious: the chaos doesn't happen by accident. According to Murphy, dismantling USAID makes it easier for political elites to reroute funds, pick winners and losers, and open the door for private deals hidden from public view. And that raised a burning question: was this really about saving money, or was it about something far more self-serving? If foreign aid was already under siege, Murphy argued, the real danger came from something even bigger: the merging of personal business interests with the work of the presidency. When presidents or their families are actively signing new business deals with foreign governments, the line between diplomacy and private profit begins to blur, and that line is supposed to be ironclad. Murphy pressed the issue: what happens when a foreign government wants to win favor in Washington? Do they negotiate on security, trade, and humanitarian grounds, or do they slip money into investments tied to the president's circle? That question alone struck at the heart of America's credibility abroad. Allies can't trust us, adversaries can exploit us, and American citizens are left wondering whose interests are really being served. Examples piled up quickly: foreign nations announcing investments in ventures linked to the president's family, business partnerships emerging alongside diplomatic visits, and questions about whether policy was being shaped not by strategy but by profit. Murphy warned that once foreign policy becomes entangled with private gain, every decision looks suspect. The United States cannot lead the world if partners believe contracts and handshakes are just bargaining chips for personal deals, and the next revelation would make those fears even harder to ignore. Just when the hearing seemed explosive enough, Murphy turned to the issue that made the committee's jaws tighten: cryptocurrency. Reports surfaced of foreign governments, including the UAE, pouring investments into a new stablecoin venture tied directly to the president's family businesses. At the same time, the president himself was using social media to hype a meme coin, blurring the lines between public leadership and private marketing. For Murphy, this wasn't just about quirky internet tokens, it was about national security. If foreign governments are backing financial ventures connected to the presidency, are they buying into a currency, or buying influence? The timing of the deals, coming alongside diplomatic engagements and trade negotiations, raised serious alarms. These weren't harmless side hustles. They looked like pipelines for foreign money to flow into presidential ventures, bypassing traditional oversight and accountability. And the optics couldn't have been worse. Every post promoting the coin, every report of investments from abroad, reinforced the suspicion that American policy could be steered by the wallets of foreign investors. Murphy's warning was unmistakable: when personal financial projects overlap with national policy, the country's credibility is the first casualty. But that wasn't even the most shocking revelation, because then came the story of the luxury plane. As if the crypto controversy weren't enough, Murphy zeroed in on one of the strangest stories yet, the rumored gift of a luxury plane from Qatar. The question sounded almost unbelievable: was this aircraft being offered to the United States government as a stopgap replacement for Air Force One, or was it being positioned as a personal gift that could later serve as a trophy in a presidential library? The answers were muddled at best. Officials deflected, claiming the plane was meant for government use, but details kept shifting. Even worse, no one seemed able to clearly explain whether the jet would remain under U.S. military control or whether it could eventually drift into private hands. To Murphy, that confusion was the problem. When billion-dollar assets are being handed over with blurred lines of ownership, it opens the door for corruption, favors, and hidden strings attached. The image of foreign governments sliding luxury gifts toward the presidency while policy decisions hang in the balance was exactly the kind of scandal Murphy wanted Americans to see. This wasn't about generosity, it was about leverage. And if a plane could be treated like a bargaining chip, what else might be up for sale? Just when it seemed the stakes couldn't climb higher, Murphy dropped the revelation that made the entire room lean in: a private dinner, scheduled for later in the week, where access to the president was being sold to the top 200 buyers of his meme coin. On the surface, it looked like nothing more than a fundraiser wrapped in novelty, but dig deeper, and it raised disturbing questions about national security. Reports suggested nearly half of the attendees would be foreign nationals, some with unknown backgrounds and financial interests. Imagine that: foreign investors paying their way into a VIP reception with the leader of the free world, all under the banner of a digital currency. Murphy demanded to know if the guest list had been vetted. Were sanctioned individuals slipping through? Could ties to hostile networks be hiding behind flashy portfolios? Rubio claimed ignorance, brushing off the concerns. But his lack of answers only added to the suspicion. For Murphy, this wasn't about one dinner. It was about the creation of a back channel, a way for powerful outsiders to whisper their agendas directly to the top, bypassing traditional safeguards. If policy could be influenced over steak and cocktails, what else was being decided out of sight? At the end of the day, Senator Chris Murphy wasn't just sparring with Marco Rubio, he was sounding an alarm. Behind every statistic, every shutdown, every cryptic business deal, and every private dinner, there was a pattern, one that blurred the line between national service and personal interest. Aid wasn't just being debated, it was being undermined. Business wasn't just being done, it was being woven into the very fabric of foreign policy, and dinners weren't just social gatherings, they were potential backdoor channels for influence. Murphy's message was simple but devastating: if Americans don't demand accountability, their foreign policy will be sold off piece by piece, traded away in private rooms, where profit takes priority over principle. Allies will stop trusting us, adversaries will seize the chaos, and the American people, the ones footing the bill, will be left in the dark. The question now isn't whether corruption exists, it's whether we're willing to confront it before it swallows our credibility whole. So what do you think? Are we still leading the world, or auctioning it off to the highest bidder? Drop your thoughts in the comments. And if you found this breakdown eye-opening, hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications, because the next video digs even deeper into the stories they don't want you to hear.